start of the 2020s, Hollywood suddenly found themselves unable to film live-action shows and movies. Not because of a strike, at least not yet, but because of the need to social distance and isolate. This led to a surge in animated projects that brought a struggling American industry back to top flight. Things seemed great for a while, and then, a couple of years later, it all fell apart. With the Corona conversation conveniently claimed concluded, executives suddenly decided that the best thanks they could give to the hardworking artists that kept business humming was to fire them all. Netflix killed a ton of projects, Cartoon Network Studios was forcibly merged with Warner Brothers Animation, Max began removing beloved fan favorites for tax reasons, movies were canceled, shows were canceled, and while I'd love to say that we've rebounded since then, we haven't. There are still hundreds of unemployed animators, designers, and story artists looking for any scrap of work they can find. And it sucks. And it's insulting. And if a solution is coming, we haven't seen it yet. Independent animation may seem like the new wave, but for every Has-Been Hotel or Digital Circus, there's a bunch of pilots that never become series, and even more pitches that never get off the ground. After all, Has-Been got the funding of Amazon, and if companies like Amazon or Netflix are no longer buying, then it doesn't matter what you're selling. It's clear that the animation industry is in dire need of a savior, and after watching today's movies, I sure know who it won't be. That's right, the pasty Hawaiian shirt-wearing dweebus John Lasseter crawled out of whatever hole he was hiding in to spearhead a brand new animation outfit called Skydance Animation. This studio started as a simple collaboration between Skydance Media and a Madrid-based studio known as Ilion. Prior to making Luck, they were most known for the films Planet 51 and the absolute fiasco that was Wonder Park. To be clear, Wonder Park's implosion had nothing to do with them, but definitely a studio that could benefit from some leadership with experience. And all the while, Lasseter would be building up a second studio in Los Angeles, hiring hundreds of artists and launching multiple film projects, including Spellbound, which released this past year. And this would all be great and wonderful if you just pretend that John left Pixar amicably. But we know better than that, and so should Skydance, whose internal investigation I guess determined, nah, it's fine, he'll make us money, bring him in. The allegations against Lasseter are out there and he didn't exactly refute it all. They're free to hire him and I'm free to criticize them. And you better believe I have some criticisms because wow, these films are not very good. In Luck's case, it's really not very good. I'm going to talk about both films and why I think both fail in their own way, and I don't know if there will be a satisfying conclusion to the video, but the films don't have one either, so I'm just following their formula. I also have no interest in ragging on the artists themselves. That's not to say I won't nitpick or critique visual elements here or there, but Skydance is a new operation, one arm of which is being built from scratch, so they're learning as they go. And if you weren't aware, there's sort of an unspoken rule in the industry not to disrespect other artists, because they could be hiring or recruiting you in the future. Not that I plan on moving to Spain or anything, but there's plenty to break down about these films without just railing on the art. I will say that Luck is a little more stiff and awkward in its animation, but Spellbound mostly looks perfectly fine. And there are some things artistically that I find funny or flat that I will mention, but most of the flaws come down to the storytelling itself, and what I can't confirm but assume are corporate mandated decisions. So enough preamble, just sit back and relax as we explore I have to admit, I'm deeply fascinated with how bad of a movie Luck is. I've literally watched it 5 times now, more than I've watched any other animated film since childhood. This $140 million movie dropped unceremoniously on Apple TV in 2022, to absolute thudding silence, despite having John Lasseter attached as well as Simon Pegg, Jane Fonda, and Whoopi Goldberg. Okay, well, Whoopi Goldberg also voiced the talking bat in Everyone's Hero, so I guess the last one isn't a surprise. But this won't be such a mystery once you examine just how unseriously the film was put together. It is a movie completely uninterested in entertaining its audience, with so little personality or flavor that it feels like someone wrote a movie based on a tutorial project. As if to challenge the viewer to an endurance contest, the film starts with a music video rather than a proper introduction. There's sort of emoji-looking cats and characters that you won't actually be seeing for an hour, and our protagonist Sam Greenfield does a poppy song and dance about being a shining star. Why she's doing this, I don't know. It is almost entirely irrelevant to the story, but it does have this repeated animation that both characters do in near perfect sync, and I hope you like it because it will be making a return later. This dance is interrupted with some slapstick, and it's at this point that we learn that Sam is unlucky. And if the fact that the film is called Luck has not been drilled into your skull enough, her little friend Hazel is putting together a diorama of lucky objects and just needs a lucky penny to complete it. The two live in this orphanage, and Sam is aged out of the program after being rejected by family after family. So it's in this small stretch of story that we have the smallest fleck of a human element. Sam has been beaten down with endless disappointments, and doesn't want the same thing to happen to Hazel, who has now been herself rejected by her first potential family. And there's a little something here that I think could be interesting if it was explored further, but let's get back to the concept of luck here. Sam's situation is framed as being at a sort of rock bottom, that she's been completely failed by the system and dumped out, never knowing the joy of having a family, and this is considered bad luck. But maybe there's something I don't know about the American orphanage industry, but the fact that Sam is not only given a free apartment for a year and a job and a laptop and a smartphone seems pretty damn fortunate to me. And I don't just mean that in a Fox News poor people have refrigerators way. I mean, look at this place. It's nice. The worst aspect is the windows sometimes don't shut all the way. They could have made it a total junker, a rat trap, but it's a cozy loft and it's well furnished. Her boss at work is also incredibly forgiving and patient with her despite the misfortune she brings. See, Sam is meant to be ridiculously unlucky, but what this ultimately means is that she's a little clumsy and stuff tends to malfunction or break around her. It's a very Looney Tunes application of the concept, which does result in some fun visual gags and choreographed events, but it's more of a death by 1,000 cuts kind of bad luck than a Job from the Bible losing everyone and everything he knows kind of luck. I also think that some of the moments of bad luck don't make a lot of sense, like she can't find a pair of matching socks in her drawer, but couldn't she just sort them? Now, Sam has been living through bad luck for so long that she is often prepared for it, like this scene where her bike breaks down and she quickly fixes it, and that's admittedly a nice bit of character. Unfortunately, where the story is going, Sam is going to be taken completely out of her element and will become a bumbling pratfall factory, so this trait doesn't last very long, aside from Sam just being a very determined woman. While enjoying a sandwich, she decides to share some with this cute black cat. Not a good idea, he's gonna shit his guts out. She discovers a penny on the ground, which turns out to be the exact kind of lucky penny that Hazel's been looking for, and it is very lucky. Suddenly, everything starts humming along perfectly in Sam's life. And if the film was just about this lucky penny, and Sam using it to cheat her way up the ladder and build an extravagant life for herself, I wonder if that would be more interesting to watch, even if it would lead to a more generic lesson. Instead, she loses the lucky penny when it falls into a toilet, and the censor flushes it, because she tries to do some Mission Impossible shit instead of just reaching in from underneath and grabbing it. When she relates this to the cat, yeah, I'll come back to this later, something unexpected happens. To her, not to us. You've seen this 1,000 times.
You did what? You flushed my penny down the toilet! What did you do that for?
Yeah, the cat isn't as cute when he talks, huh? He makes a break for it, and we are treated to what I consider the quote-unquote high point of the film, a comedic chase scene through the city that allows for gags of both extraordinarily good and bad luck to crisscross. It shows that the artists can have some fun when they're allowed to let loose. Unfortunately, it's all downhill from here, and not a fun downhill like Tony Hawk's famous Jam. From this point forward, the film becomes the most joyless slog of an animated film you've ever seen. You see, for some reason, Skydance made an animated comedy without jokes. Every scene going forward consists of characters either explaining how luck works, recapping something that just happened, or explaining what they're about to be doing. It's the most expositional, dry, vacuous storytelling of any major animated motion picture in the modern era. Just to give one example, Sam relates the events that happened to her to a non-talking cat in 2 separate scenes. Here they are!
My friend, Hazel, could have been one step closer to getting adopted today. but it didn't happen. Her weekend visit got canceled. Remember I told you I wanted good luck for my friend Hazel for her visit tomorrow? Well, guess what? After you left last night, I found some.
This time-wasting nonsense may seem like it underestimates the intelligence of its audience, but it's actually something more cynical in my opinion. This is clearly second screen writing, a film that assumes that you're either not in the room half the time, or busy reading the Shower Thoughts Reddit on your phone. There is absolutely no room for characters to organically interact with each other, or for jokes to be told, so why should I tell any either? Off to the land of luck with you. What is the land of luck? Well, it's supposed to be an imaginative, fantastical world full of mythical creatures, all providing luck to the human realm. But like a field trip to a cemetery, you'll quickly wish you were doing something more exciting like multivariable calculus. This world is boring the instant Sam arrives, featuring a bunch of office buildings and highly inconvenient forms of travel. Why is pedestrian traffic handled via a series of tiny platforms, rails, and swings? How about just a fucking train or monorail? And why does this all look like Willy Wonka built an office park? Well, when John Lasseter joined Skydance in 2019, he made massive changes to the film, replacing the original director and screenwriters with entirely new ones that he had worked with previously, and asked them to change the film into a Monsters Inc. style corporate satire. Except, I guess, for the satire part. You know the episode of The Simpsons where Bart's class goes to the cardboard box factory? Well, what if they made the manufacturing of the boxes needlessly complicated? It starts with research and development wings, which as far as I can tell are just a bunch of writers' rooms, so I'm not sure where the R or D are. Their ideas are printed on leaves, which then get carried by ladybugs to these pigs, and the leaves form clovers, which the pigs breathe on, and then they become luck crystals, and the luck crystals go into this randomizer, which then become luck dust? And then the luck dust is sent out to luck lines that connect to the human realm? It's like the world's least interesting yes and session. Personally, if I was Sam, I'd be pretty livid that my life has all been one cosmic joke to these skit writers. But that would require Sam to be multidimensional, and there's no time for that when there's all this fake whimsy to joylessly describe. So what even is the point of all this? Besides none, Sam wants to get a new lucky penny for Hazel, and Bob is missing his own. The two strike a deal to work together to get one, which involves nabbing one during the, sanding process? Which is handled via this convoluted Celtic pattern of a conveyor belt? How is this efficient, especially if one little hiccup causes the whole thing to collapse? It's just manufactured whimsy to try and make things seem more delightful than they actually are. So when that fails, they decide they need to hijack a drone at the command center to retrieve the original Lucky Penny back on Earth. If that's a little confusing for you, don't worry. The film explains in excruciating detail what they're doing. In order to provide a distraction for Bob, oh boy, are you ready for this? Sam does the song and dance from the beginning of the movie right down to the same dancing animation. They thought this was such an iconic dance move that they even included it in the credits. But it is also the lamest checkoff device I've ever seen. And it raises a question perhaps as pointless as the device itself. If Sam can sing and dance this well, why is that not further integrated into the story and theming? As a character, Sam Greenfield is kind and steadfast, and that's about it. The fact that she's unlucky is not a character trait, that's just stuff that happens to her. She lacks a path of growth. She's the same person at the end of the film as she is at the start, just with a different perspective on things, which we'll get into later. After a couple of setbacks, Sam has to go to the other side of the land where bad luck resides. And okay, the good luck side of the world is this mishmash of dull and wacky, but what is the bad luck side like? The same. It's the fucking same. They could have made it different. They could have made it a bunch of ruins and buildings on fire. They could have done anything other than it being the exact same thing, but nighttime. It's here where Sam meets John Ratzenberger in a tiki bar, but this time behind the counter rather than in front. He tells her that when Trump builds, the world watches. Wait, sorry, that was just an actual tweet John wrote. He shows Sam that having bad luck isn't necessarily all that bad.
That's one of the benefits of bad luck. It teaches you to pivot.
I never really thought about it that way.
And if that seems like an odd sentiment to you, you're not alone. The film is building to a core message that I don't really agree with, and you're just gonna be scratching your head more as we continue. There's this sequence in the in-between which directly splits both sides of the world. Don't think about the gravity situation, it doesn't matter. We get introduced to the film's zany character, Jeff the Unicorn, whose sole gimmick is being a German stereotype.
Yeah, recently I have reverted to my birth name. Heimdall! Heimdall. Like, you know, the little doll, but first with a Heim in the front.
He's in charge of running this machine that keeps bad luck particles from sticking onto things, because I guess that's something that can happen? Are there good luck particles that stick to things? You're thinking harder than the film does, you need to quit that. Sam and Bob strike out here as well, and we go to plan G or H at this point, which is asking this luck dragon, who I guess is the boss of luck. There's no such equivalent on the other side, despite the symmetry. She really hates bad luck and gives Sam a new penny, which Sam selflessly gives to Bob instead of keeping it, so he doesn't get in trouble for losing his own. And this sacrifice would have weight if it mattered even a little bit, but Sam doesn't go back home. She instead goes to plan J, which is sabotaging Jeff's machine in the in-between so that only good luck goes into the randomizer and Hazel can get adopted. But this causes an overflow that overloads the randomizer, destroys the luck stones, and completely severs the connection between the world of luck and the human realm. I've been sitting on this for a while, but I think it's finally time to talk about the film's attempt to make luck into a tangible system. It's a complete fool's errand. When the connection is severed, the luck dragon says, "Oh, no human will ever experience luck again."
And instead, you've made sure that she and no other humans will ever experience luck again.
And I'm sorry, what do you mean? What could you possibly mean by that? In attempting to make luck tangible, you've rendered it entirely incomprehensible. Even worse is what the luck dragon wants to do when it comes time for the federally mandated action climax in a villain-free film. The luck dragon decides that she is going to power the reactor using only good luck, so that no one has to suffer from bad luck again. What does that mean? Will every football game end with both teams winning? Everyone wins at the casino and also the house wins too? It's complete nonsense. There are too many situations in which someone wins and someone loses. Someone has to get the short straw. And in fact, the overall messages of the film are quite crummy as well. Let's put the tangible nature of luck aside for a second. Bob says that what makes Sam such a good person is that she's willing to sacrifice her own happiness for others.
Or to help, even if helping might stop you from getting what you want the most.
And that's not really fully explored in the film. Like, what is Sam even giving up? She has a job with stable income, a nice apartment, and we have no insight into her personal interests or hobbies. This is why the singing and dancing sucks as a pure callback. What if she had something pivotal of her own relying on the roll of the dice? What if she put her musical talents to use and was auditioning for something? The other message of the film is that luck is a matter of perspective, and that you need bad luck sometimes to experience good things in your life.
You only met Jeff because he'd been doused by bad luck, which means it didn't tear you apart. Bad luck brought you together in the first place.
And, no, I don't like that either. I know this is a kid's film, but even for a kid's film, I think this fruit is rotten to the core. At the risk of turning into that guy who complained about turning red, not talking about 9/11, I just have to say, there's a lot of kids who have to endure shitty fucking lives completely outside of their control. What about kids that grow up with abusive parents, for example? Is there supposed to be a bright side to that? Look, maybe Sam would not have met Hazel if she only had good luck, but she might have made other friends. Friends her actual age, and she'd have been placed with a family at a young age, since the film has decided that families choosing you is good luck rather than just opportunity and fits. Hey, these sound like things that could be sacrificed for the well-being of another. What if she were able to see what her life would have been like with different luck? It's not that the cart was put before the horse, it's that there is no horse at all. We are horseless, people! I promise to move on in a second, but I also gotta add, Sam keeping the lucky penny and changing her luck was never on the table. She was always doing it for Hazel, so like, what ultimately is her arc? She had already accepted that her bad luck was just a part of her life and she could work around it at the beginning of the film. What was the point of any of this? In the epilogue, Bob decides to live with Sam, and seems completely uninterested in keeping his voice a secret, including with Hazel's new family. What's interesting to me is that if you cut this scene at Hazel's family's house, the ending becomes much different, because the final scene is of Hazel sleeping over at Sam's in matching PJs, with a fold-out bed right next to Sam's. Doesn't that make it seem like an earlier draft had Sam adopting Hazel? And wouldn't that fit better? Because Hazel would experience the bad luck of a family not choosing her, but that bad luck creates the opportunity to be a part of Sam's family. I mean, admittedly, we're talking somewhat implausible odds that an 18-year-old fresh out of the orphanage would just be able to turn right around and adopt someone else from that same orphanage. But this is also a film that says that luck is a bunch of joke prompts written onto a leaf, so... The fun thing about luck, and I promise you it is entirely external to the film, is that the movie is so threadbare that you and your friends can easily come up with more interesting ideas as you're watching it. It's like a 2-hour Jackbox game where each scene is a potential improv session. Create your own alternatives to the stepping in dogshit wing of the bad luck research and development building. Okay, I need to have this film taken away from me. So how did Skydance and Lasseter take the lessons they learned from Luck and carry them forward into their next project? Well, that would imply that lessons were learned. Just 2 years after Luck, Spellbound would release not on Apple Plus, but on Netflix in November of 2024. And apparently it was the second most watched original film in its opening week. But if you haven't heard or seen anything about this movie, well, I'm not surprised. The story takes place in the Kingdom of Lumbria, a name I only learned by looking at the Wikipedia synopsis after seeing the film. And if that gives you any indication about the world building to come, those concerns are well placed. A lot of things happen in the opening 5 minutes that don't really matter. Princess Elian flies around with her friends on these large griffins. These friends and these griffins disappear remarkably quickly from the film and play absolutely no role in the story. The princess and her royal advisors, Bolinar and Nazra, are hiding a big secret from the townspeople, which is that the king and queen have been transformed into monsters and have been for over a year. We're quickly treated to multiple as-you-knows and lyrical explanations, which are my least favorite ways to convey information to the audience. As it turns out, the king and queen went on a journey into the dark forest of eternal darkness for, some reason, and became cursed. And with Elian about to turn 15, the advisors are beginning to plot a coup to place Elian on the throne as a puppet, which... fair? There's no king or queen, and it's been a year, and they just keep shutting their generals out. So yeah, it makes sense. But it's kind of framed like they're scheming, and I don't know, I kind of side with them on this issue. The opening music number shows just how chaotic the monsters are when they're out of their cages, and the level of destruction they're committing really leaves me skeptical about just how sturdy those cage rooms are. These guys can burst through walls, and somehow they've never escaped the castle this entire time? Also, how were the transformed king and queen brought into the castle in the first place? I try not to scrutinize a clear fairy tale structure too hard, but this is an extremely flimsy set of circumstances the movie has established already. What are the ramifications of a completely dysfunctional government having on the townspeople? We don't know, because we get no insight into life in the city. The townspeople show up in all of 2 scenes in the entire film. So Elian summons these 2 magic goofy little guys called oracles, who I don't like, and you won't like them either, to transform the monsters back into humans, but a sequence of extraordinarily annoying events drive them away, but not without their magic key fob winding up in the hands and cheeks of this animal sidekick, leading to a relatively enjoyable chase scene in which the monsters finally escape the castle and the secret gets revealed. The general orders the monsters to be taken to the furthest reaches of the territory, which prompts Elian to run away with them herself in an attempt to find those gay magic wizards who just so happen to live in the same forest that cursed her parents in the first place. I guess the general doesn't like this because she orders the soldiers to try to stop the monsters from leaving the city, which involves unleashing this, waterfall gate? Okay, I have so many questions. Again, why are they trying to stop the monsters from leaving? Isn't that what they want? Hey, you can't leave, we're trying to banish you! And what is the point of this water gate? How about, I don't know, a drawbridge? Or just a regular gate? What's the water supposed to do? Get you soaked and then it's like really embarrassing? It doesn't matter because the fob makes these hands go see the gate open. Okay, not really, but that would have ruled, allowing them to get through. On their way to meet the oracles, the royal advisor Bolinar gets mind-swapped with the cute creature, which feels like a convenient way to get a talking animal sidekick into the film. And I'm starting to get flashbacks to Disney's Wish, which itself casts its protagonist out of the kingdom with a magically enchanted talking animal. But here, Bolinar at least has some purpose, which is to cast doubt on Elian's quest to cure her parents. The oracles think that following some beacons to this lake of light will restore the spark inside the parents that kept the dark magic away. We'll get to this aspect of the story later because it's the only narrative plank the film puts down to build a certain bridge. And we'll find ourselves bafflingly thrown to the other side of that bridge in about 45 minutes or so. Elian is determined to get to the lake, while Bolinar insists that she give up on this quest because these monsters are not her parents anymore, they're just mindless beasts. And here's the thing, for a good portion of this film, Bolinar and Nazara aren't wrong. The fact that the kingdom has been without a ruler for a year is just kind of insane. And establishing Elian as the queen, even at the age of 15, at least makes some kind of sense rather than continuing to look for a cure. But this is a Disney-esque fairy tale, so of course Elian is in the right, and okay, fine. But would it have killed the writers to give her some kind of flaw? Whether it's by Disney themselves or people emulating Disney, we've seen a bumper crop of awkward but otherwise plasticine heroines. And it really frustrates me. It's all well and good to create role models for kids, but role models are not supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to have flaws and make mistakes so that they can learn and grow, just as you are trying to impart to your presumed audience. How many times are we going to see a young female protagonist whose sole defining trait is that they're slightly dorky? So a pivotal scene happens inside of this giant log where spoken words are either blue happy bubbles or red angry lightning. It's a silly scene, and further punctuating the silliness is what happens when the monster parents realize their child is in danger from all the ricocheting angry beams. They, and who knows how this happens, it just happens, they suddenly can talk, and they say the word girl to create bubbles that diffuse the beams. That was such a stupid sentence I had to write just then. Imagine this being a major emotionally resonant moment in a blockbuster animated film. So now they can speak, but in kind of a toddler way, which is not exactly beating the allegations from Bolinar, but you'd at least think he would chill out a little since there's been a major change already in this journey. But no, he continues to be an annoying little pest that keeps trying to alert soldiers to their position. There's a part in the film where they find a nut trail. There's just a trail of nuts on the ground? But where did this come from? Bolinar wasn't doing that before. You couldn't even have him doing it in the background of some shot? Then the very next scene, they make it super obvious that he's been nutting, and it's like, is this film for preschoolers lacking an object permanence, or is it for all audiences? Anyway, I can't just rattle off every detail or this video's gonna get its revenue vaporized. The parents eventually remember who they are, and they reach their final destination. But they aren't able to use the Late Lake to transform back because, well, you see, they're getting a divorce. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention the parents were constantly fighting and at each other's throats before they got transformed? Well, the film deliberately hid this information until this very moment, and we get a song about how much Elian suffered from her parents not caring about her and constantly fighting, and it's like, where was this before? Okay, I have to address something here quickly before I get tuned in the skull by my comments section. Yes, I know the parents being monsters is an allegory. I know that the scene in the log is meant to represent the emotional trauma that parents inflict on their children when they fight. I just think the story as a whole could have been executed a lot better. And I'm also trying to look at this from the perspective of a 7 or 8 year old that would be seeing this film for the first time. I think that not showing any indication of the parents having a rough patch at the beginning of the film, no matter how well-intentioned, was a mistake. There's not really a delineation on whether the monsters are fighting or playing at the beginning of the film. They're just sort of depicted as uncontrollable forces of nature. Elian naively chooses to remember the good times in her one song in Act 1, but that naivete is only clear in hindsight. I want to support this kind of metaphor. It allows for a soft handling of a complex subject that can help kids whose parents are splitting. But you have to see it all the way through, and I don't feel like the film does. this. Any scenes with the parents fighting only truly happen in Act 2, and it's just not a smooth enough on-ramp. Elian often reacts in these moments with kind of a "aw shucks guys, quit clowning around" attitude, until this sequence where the mother and father argue over whose plan to get through a patch of quicksand is better. And even still, despite the drama of the situation and the emotion in the music, it still feels kind of weak. The flashback of the parents squabbling is really just kind of petty bickering. I think that maybe the writers were afraid to actually trigger any traumas in kids who have gone through this ordeal, so they played it safe. And hey, I'm not saying you need to show them chasing each other with axes, but you do have them as monsters. And monsters can be scary. You would think that they'd have a scene in Act 1 or 2 of the parent monsters fighting to the point that they actually become scary to Elian, but they're always just kind of cuddly and silly. But like a lot of issues I have with the film, this could have been resolved with better management of the pacing, and the pacing in this film is just weird. Stuff is constantly happening and yet nothing is happening at the same time. There's this scene with a postmaster who just wistfully mourns his dead carrier pigeons who all turned to stone. This is supposed to be comedic, but it's not, and it runs on way too long. This time could have been better spent showing life around the kingdom, or establishing Elian's friends as more than just ephemeral vestiges. Spellbound is a 2-hour film where at least a third of the film is spent on utter nonsense. The wizards fighting over the concept of a key fob, this song and dance where Bolinar suddenly likes being an animal. It's actually a really fun musical number, the closest thing this film has to a showstopper, but it is a completely inconsequential scene that comes from nowhere and leads to nothing. I'm gonna talk about the songs for a minute because there's 8 of the dang things, and 4 of them happen in the first 30 minutes. These songs are clear attempts to match the quote-unquote magic of Disney musical numbers, but a lot of them fall short, which is interesting because they're all composed by Alan Menken. The lyrics flow pretty poorly and the things the characters are singing are often kind of trite. It's either plot explanations or the proclamation of very basic emotions. The Want song in the movie has the lyric, "There's got to be a way back to the way it was before." It is a song that resonates with the central theme of the film, but I also think it lacks a certain complexity that I would expect to see from the adolescent mind of a 15-year-old. It's a purely naive and wistful tune with flashbacks of happier times. And I'm not saying that a teen wouldn't feel or yearn for this, but should there not also be some resentment if you're trying to build a proper character arc? We get that in Act 3's What About Me, but the sudden outburst doesn't gel with the intimate connection the film has been trying to establish with the audience. Elian literally addresses the camera at the beginning of the film, and is singing to us. We are being led into our innermost thoughts and feelings. It doesn't make sense for this anger and sorrow to have been closed off from us. It's like they decided, this will be sad song, this will be explanation song, this will be explanation song, this will be explanation song, this will be happy song, and this will be mad song. On that happy song, it's another nostalgic number called Remembering, and in it, Elian and her parents are reminiscing of the days when they'd stargaze, but the monsters can only sing in baby talk, creating this unpleasant cloying sucralose sweetness that feels devised rather than inspired. Lastly, I'd like to discuss the overall lesson of the film, because we haven't really seen a lot of animated films that touch on divorce and the impact it has on children, and how you work through it, and how some families don't get a happy ending, but they don't have a sad ending either. I think that there is something genuine here, a message that deserves to be heard. Even though Spellbound is not a very good movie, a jerry-rigged contraption of template materials, I'd like to believe that all the way back to the initial conception, there was a very personal story being told. Stories told from creators that put themselves in their work have a lot more meaning to me than films made by committee. It's why I've always preferred the work of Pixar to Disney. The only problem is that, whatever may have happened during the production stage, Spellbound clearly lost that DNA and became more of a lighthearted Disney quest. I just don't believe that this final product is the true artist's vision, and so the messages get muddled. The parents aren't allowed to be truly scary. Pointless comedic scenes take the place of actual characterization. This dark magic tornado as a concept is disconcerting in its execution. It's supposedly attracted to dark thoughts, and the parents' toxicity towards each other was meant to be something truly dark, and that's why the Oracle's bickering or Bolinar grumbling doesn't summon it. But you know what does summon it? Elian's genuine hurt over being told her parents are separating, her fear and pain from being in the crossfire of her parents fighting. And why? Are you saying to your child audience that these are not feelings they should have, especially in the moment, that they should bottle it up? I don't get it. Even the parents agree that her feelings are genuine and right by singing an apology song to free her from the tornado. It's this kind of thing that makes metaphors thorny, but for all I know, this climax may have been the result of rewrites, and that makes the experience as a whole feel compromised. So in the end, I think I've made my feelings for Johnny Boy's movies pretty clear. I think that the artists and animators did the best they could with the budget and story they were given, but what they were given was clumsy and incomplete. Spellbound is definitely a better overall film, from its setting to its story to its pacing and theming, but that wasn't exactly a high bar to clear. I think the Land of Lumbria could have been better defined, but it's still far more interesting than the Land of Luck. I also think that Luck barely qualifies as a film and feels more like the narrative equivalent of a travel pamphlet mixed with a 500-page instruction manual. However, I also think that Luck's physical comedy, at least in the opening 20 minutes, is more clever and thought out than anything that happens in Spellbound, and the sight gags work a lot better than just expecting the audience to laugh at two people arguing because it's awkward. Look, they're looking at each other awkwardly. That's the laugh time now. And because Spellbound is closer to a fully realized film, the elements not coming together makes me more frustrated, because it has some potential in there that is not being reached. I can tell you one thing these films have in common though: a 1-year time skip. I'm not joking, both films cut to a 1 year later. Did they fucking forget that they already did it in Luck? Is every film from them going to do a time skip ending? I kind of hope they do, that would be legitimately hilarious. Romeo and Juliet lie dead together from their mutual ingestion of poison as the two families mourn. 1 year later? Hey folks, Romeo here. Life's been pretty crazy since the whole dying thing. Or should I say, afterlife. Now, is John responsible for every problem with these movies? Obviously not. But when you consider the massive story changes that happened to Luck when he joined Skydance, it's really hard not to also blame Spellbound's issues on executive micromanagement. Elian and Sam as characters feel like all the edges have been sanded off. The film starts with the parents already transformed, so they can punt the relationship issues to the third act as a big twist. The songs are a clear, and I'd say cynical attempt to mimic the aesthetics and choreography of a Disney film. I can't prove it, but these feel strongly like corporate decisions. Hey, if I'm wrong, fine. But at the end of the day, the movie posters say, "From the visionary behind Toy Story," so he gets to take responsibility for these failures. Will they eventually find their footing? Based on the growth from film to film, I wouldn't be surprised if their next film gets that much closer to their goal of being another Disney. But is that really admirable? To just emulate another studio as closely as possible? Where's your own voice? What's your style? It's one thing for TV shows to adopt similar visual styles and language because of the ease at which offshore studios can work on them. But John's hiring hundreds of artists in Los Angeles to just imitate a competitor? DreamWorks doesn't do that. Not anymore. And if these films are what we can expect out of John Lasseter's stewardship, why should he be there? You let a weirdo back into the industry just to make middling direct-to-streaming Disney simulations? These artists are capable of making much better art than this, I'm sure of it. So step aside, or at least stop bringing in your old pals and let people cook. Otherwise, the randomizer won't be blessing your studio with good luck for much longer. Is there a smaller studio film that you'd like to see me review, or one you think needs more love? Let me know in the comments. My channel is generally a positive place for recommendations, so I'm always looking for more stuff to share with everyone. In addition to talking about animation, I also talk about indie games and retro games, and if you like this video, I'm starting a brand new Patreon exclusive series called Director's Notes, where I use my past directorial experience to give feedback to animated scenes. And every video comes out a day or so ahead of schedule on my Patreon, along with exclusive videos. So throw a buck my way and I'll keep on trucking. Or you can donate $3 and join these lovely folks. Until next time, you'll find me in another castle.